Hello. It's a truism to say, I think, that the road to stardom in the movies is a lot longer for some actors than it is for others. And it's been a long one for my guest tonight, Bruce Dern. He has been around a lot of years. You've seen him in dozens of films. But it's only, I guess, relatively recently that he's truly come into his own with leading roles in pictures like Gatsby and the Great Gatsby, that is, Smile, Black Sunday, and especially his latest film, which is the Vietnam drama Coming Home. Jane Fonda was on here talking about that. But there's something appropriate about this because in his private life, Bruce is a runner. He's not a, well, I guess he is still a runner. He's a long-distance man, not a sprinter. I admire anybody who can stay the distance, and not to torture this metaphor too long, he seems to be doing that in his career. He's known to be an actor of discipline and toughness and everything else that it takes. Would you welcome, please, Bruce Dern. I know you're terribly nervous at meeting me, so let me just loosen you up with an easy question. How much do you drink, smoke, and snort coke, Bruce? I thought we'd get that out of the way right.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sorry about
3 goose eggs in a row. I've never drank, I've never smoked, and I've never doped. And yet, for a long time in my career, you would think that was all I knew how to do. If, from some of the roles I played, particularly in the AIP type films. You know?
What is AIP?
Well, American International Pictures made
Corman and the horror films and
biker films, the acid films, the.
That's right. If I had to guess at your background, I would have thought maybe farm or Idaho, something like that. I don't know whether it's your physiognomy or what it is. Do people have physiognomies? Yes. But instead, your background is the best schools, really. You come from high-class level of society,
yeah,
whatever.
I guess, you know, I guess what happens when you first become an actor, you have a choice to make. You can wait for a certain kind of role that gives you a certain kind of image, or you can jump in and try and get as good as you can get as an actor and just take everything that comes along. And not being conscious at that time that acting was also, there was a great deal of acting that was business, which I didn't know, nor did I really believe in at the beginning. I thought it was just an art. And when I first came to New York as an actor in 1956 and 57, I thought that if you could become a member of the Actors Studio or work for Elia Kazan, you'd done just about all a person would want to do in their career. And those were my 2 big goals. And I got both those accomplished in the first year, and I became a member of the Actors Studio, and I studied very hard. And it was about 15 years from the beginning of my career before I realized that it was a business, and it was a part of the business involved being sold in a certain way and being in the right place at the right time, and there was more to it just than chance or luck, but somebody had to put you in the right place at the right time.
And who are those people who do that? Is it your agent in your case?
Yeah, for me it was. I was one of these guys who was very loyal, and when I left New York, I was with a certain agent for the first few years I was in New York, and then my first agent was a woman named Toby Cole. My second agent was a woman named Edith Van Cleve, who was an older lady that worked at MCA. And then we went to, I moved to California, and well, then I was with a Frank Cooper agency here, and then I moved to California, and I stayed with an agent there for 9 years. And he continually got me work in television and films, but it was just work. And there was no involvement of building me to a certain place, whereas guys that I began in the business with, like Warren Beatty and like Redford and like Jimmy Caan, were always being sold as leading men even at 21 years old. And I was never being sold as a leading man at 21 years old. I was being sold as a rural farm boy. So,
or a psychopath of one form or another.
Well, who eventually turned to psychopath, you know, because it was very dull on the farm. There was nothing else to do.
No
but
radio,
butcher the calf,
cigarettes,
you know?
or...
yeah, right. So I then kept taking the work, not realizing that getting work and becoming better as an actor and hopefully an artist would someday then give me the opportunity to play the kinds of roles I wanted to play, to do what it was that I became an actor for. And when that didn't happen, after about 9 years with this agent, I, oddly enough, was working on a film with Jane Fonda. They Shoot Horses, when it finally all hit me and I realized that I should be playing Michael Sarrazin's role, and I should not be. He was her partner in They
Yeah,
Shoot
why
Horses.
weren't you playing that part? Why didn't somebody think of that before?
Nobody gave it to me, and I was bitter as hell, and I sat in there for 10 weeks, Bonnie Bedelia and I, dragging a pregnant woman around the floor, and I realized that I should be getting better than this and doing better than that. Not only that, but Easy Rider came out that year, and Fonda, Hopper, and Nicholson all went through the roof on that picture. And
you were home drowning in bile.
Yeah, I was jealous. I was unhappy. I was.
Why not?
I felt I deserved a little more than that, so a guy named Fred Spector, who was an agent at William Morris, had called me a couple of times, and he said to me, "I believe in you. I believe you are a viable commodity in this business. I believe you can be a movie star." He says, "I believe you're a great actor. I feel you've been sold wrong for 15 years, and we have to change the image." And I left Ronnie Leaf, who was my agent, who'd done a good job with me. I went with Spector. And it was the first time in my life that I really realized what an actor needs more than anything else is a love affair with his agent as far as admiration goes. You need somebody who really will hang in there with you. And it was tough, because even at William Morris, it took us 2 years to make the other agents there feel that I had a shot. And for the first 12 months I was there, I didn't have a day's work. I stopped doing television. I would not play any more crazy kind of people unless it was in a very big movie. Yeah. And we kept hanging out for a role that would change a certain kind of image. And he and William Morris together gave my wife and I $1,000 a month.
With no interest gave you money?
Yeah, with no interest or anything.
Bruce.
No, that's a true story. No interest or anything, and for a whole year we just hung in there. I eventually paid it back, but they never called a note on me or anything like that. And they really put their money where their mouth was, and they believed him, and particularly Fred. I mean, he did a sensational job hanging in there with me, and it was very tough. And I did a movie after that, Drive, he said, which then...
That's when Nicholson directed it.
Right, but it was about 14 months from the time we did it until it was released. And then it was another year after that that I finally got the part in Silent Running, which was the beginning of a second part of my career. But oddly enough, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. I was going to say, if you and Redford rep for the same part, it would seem unlikely to me, because you have a character face in a way. You don't really have what is, at least in the cliched sense of Hollywood, thought of as a leading man's face.
Well,
is that,
at 21
unfair?
years old, particularly, as I've matured, I've come closer to the facial structure of somebody who would be considered a leading man. But at 21 years old, there was no comparison at all. Yeah. Redford did a movie called War Hunt in 1960, which was his first film, which the Saunders brothers did. And he was so far ahead of me then already, I couldn't even get a reading to play the bit part. They gave that to Sidney Pollack, you know. I couldn't even play the character role in that. But it was very tough for me. I mean, Redford was lucky in that he had a powerful agency behind him from the beginning that saw him a certain way, and they were right. And they maneuvered him along a certain way, and they did very good. I didn't have that kind of care, and you need that early. If you don't get that, then you got to hang in there and just do it, you know.
But wouldn't some people feel that you've played some much more interesting parts as a result of your career than some of the ones Bob, as a dear friend of mine, has done, simply because, in a sense, he's done movies he's not happy with, as we all know. Maybe he'd rather have played the psychopath that you played, who shot John Wayne, man.
This is true.
I mean, didn't they tell you that was like raping the Statue of Liberty or something? I think that could have ended your career in the subconscious of America.
Well, luckily, he had just done his interview in Playboy magazine about the time we did the movie, so there were a lot of kids in Berkeley that just loved me, you know. But it was... yeah, I suppose I had some interesting roles. The advantage of having a career like Bob's earlier on, or say Jimmy Cahn's, or Warren's, is that the movies, when they did get a role, regardless of what it was, the movies were about them. When I was doing my roles, they were about 7 other people before they even got to me, and by that time the movie was over.
Well, I must tell you that I used to think, there he is again. You know, I would see you in one film and then another, and I think, that guy probably has no idea what a good actor he is. It's very hard to say this with you here.
That's nice.
And are they ever going to recognize it? But I remember in the one where you did shoot John Wayne, you were one of the most frightening psychopathic backwoods boobs I've ever seen. And I thought, this man wandered onto the set and they cast him. And I thought, oh no, it's that guy I've seen in Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte and so on. I wonder what if it was safe to even let him play with blank, you know, and a gun. But you're that convincing in everything you do. Ralph Richardson said the thing he admires about Olivier is he said, I don't have Larry's fine fury. And the rage and fury that you have is truly wonderful. I hope you're not going to turn your back on it because you're in danger of being typed.
No, I can't play the role that I played in Black Sunday again for a while.
I find it odd that people think that role is like the one you play in Coming Home, and I hear you do too.
Yeah.
But to me, there are important differences. And,
well, they're very different. So
because you yell at.
Because I pick up a gun, that's the thing. Yeah, they remember, pick up a gun and point it at a woman, which I just did 10 months ago, and they remember that, you
That's
know?
right, that invites
And they think that it's the same pattern going on, and it's the same guy, and that's all he is, and here he goes again, Dern doing his thing. And they're a little bored with that, you know? But the point is that I would like to change, I would have loved to play Jon Voight's part, but they didn't offer it to me, you know? And you get to a point where you say, okay, what did I begin for in the beginning? Did I begin to just be a superstar or a movie star, or did I begin to try and become an artist as an actor? And that's what I began for. I got it. I became an actor because I wanted to be a communicator. I wanted to touch people. I wanted to reach out to people. I wanted people to understand me and understand the characters that I played, and to play multi-dimensional people. That was the big fascination of it for me. And when Coming Home was offered to me, I would have loved the Jon Voight part, but I didn't get it. And I felt that there was enough to be said in that film with that character, especially with the people involved on a personal level, that it was important that this particular character get a fair shake from these people that were making this movie.
The one you did
Coming
play.
Home.
The character you did
yes,
play. You
right.
wanted to see that
In
done
other words, you know, you look at Jane and you look at John and forget for a minute who they play in the movie, and you think about what they were doing in 1968, 69, 70, and 71, and you realize that the Bob Hyde character in the movie was not a guy they would have had to dinner, and not a guy that they would have had over for whatever. And I felt that I wanted to make sure that leg of the triangle was present in the movie. And that's really why I took the part and the challenge of the part. Now, it is unfortunate that along the way I have to pick up a gun to make a certain scene work that way, but there were a lot of guys that came home and did that. There were a lot of guys that took 5 or 6 years to put that gun back in a closet once they came home. And
for those who haven't seen the movie, that's quite a frightening scene. It's right near the end.
Yeah.
And I heard that some of it was improvised, and I'm on record as saying I can't stand it when I can tell the actors are improvising in a film, because I think if they didn't know what movie they were going to make, why don't they find out before they bother to film it? But I gather you used improvisation there.
Well, we went in on a Sunday. We did an interesting thing. I mean, I've been in movies where they've been improvised and where they haven't. We improvised a scene with the director and a tape recorder, John, Jane, and I. And not just a scene. We worked from 10 in the morning till about 7 at night on a Sunday. And we decided we had to have the scene between the three of us. There hadn't been a confrontation scene in the script the way it was written originally. So we decided this had to happen, the way the movie was evolving. And so some very, very heavy personal things went down that day. It was as rough a day for John or Jane or myself as any one of us have ever had as an actor.
What kind of thing would you say in the improv?
Well, I let Jane know I was quite disappointed the fact that I had not played Michael Sarrazin's role 9 years earlier. I was quite disappointed that for a long time I felt I had been treated rather shabbily by her and her brother Peter. I did 2 movies with Peter in which I was like the 9th guy while he and Nancy Sinatra were running off into the sunset together. And
now, you actually said these things to get into the feel of the scene?
Well, you know, first of all, we would sit down, and Jane is in the room, and we knew that she would be there by herself, and I would come in. Well, I would then come in the door, and I would just look at her for a long time, and nobody would say anything. I mean, you do it, everything is on a moment-to-moment behavior basis. That's what internal acting is, and that's what we both were, and John too. And she would say, what's wrong? And I looked at her, and I said, well, I'll tell you what's wrong. I don't think you've given this character a fair shake in this movie. I don't buy a lot of the stuff that's gone down from you in the last 5 and 6 years. I don't buy a lot of stuff that went down from you when I first got in the actor's studio and I couldn't work in a scene with you. This was 17 years ago, and Andreas Voutsinas, your friend, wouldn't let me do the thing. He gave the part to Ben Piazza. And then
I'll play Jane. In your hat, Bruce.
And no, well, she didn't say that. She knew I was right.
No.
And it would go on like that, and then there were other things, and I would start saying things, and then, you know, we were talented enough that we could then take it into the dialogue the characters might say and get into that relationship about the marriage and what had happened, and the fact that in 1961 I was an actor who was very enamored of Jane Fonda, and there, but for the grace of other relationships, she and I might have gone off together for a while, but we didn't. And what made that happen? And then in the middle of all this, John comes in, and already I don't like him because he was in Deliverance and Midnight Cowboys, first two movies, you know? So
he wouldn't have been, though, if I hadn't turned those parts down.
But so I'm remembering that, and all that comes up, you know, and then it gets down, and it got into other things, and it's very tough then, you know, the tears start flowing, and you're sorry for what you say, and you're ashamed for what you say, but what comes out of that is all the emotions the character is feeling, and the other characters are feeling, and to talk you all out of that. Then we'd continue on from those feelings into what we would feel that would come out, and the people would start saying from those things. Consequently, when we were all done then, we had 7 hours of tape of certain things. Then the writer and Hal went off, and we didn't shoot it then for 2 weeks later. They put together a scene, which they then wrote out specific lines, which is what you see in the movie and what we play. So the scene, the day we shot it, was not improvised, but it came out of an improvisation from real things. And I've always worked that way. I've been told many times that sometimes I get too personal with other actors, even when I was in the actor's studio. So there were certain actors and actresses that felt, hey, wait a minute, man, I don't want you to tell me what you really think of me. You know, just because you really feel that way in life, you know, I said, but that's what the scene is about. I'm really telling you what I think about you. And saying, yeah, but I can see that you really don't like me. I've had many actors come up to me afterwards say, what's the matter, man? Why don't you like me? You know, really? I mean, you just played a scene with John Wayne, the day that I did a little part in a movie called War Wagon about 7 years before the Cowboys. And he had remembered me from that. And when I went to the Cowboys, he was aware that the long scene that we had before I killed him in the Cowboys, he was going to have to take some verbal abuse from me because it's set up that way. And I knew that I was going to have to come up with an all-time performance. Number one, to get through it, and number two, to let him know I really didn't like him. Well, he had just done the Playboy interview.
Now, wait a minute. Did you really, was part of your goal to let John Wayne,
I wanted
Michael
John
Marion
Wayne to feel
know
that I
you
hated
didn't
him.
like him?
That I hated him.
Because it increased your intensity in your performance, or because you just don't like him?
No, because I do like him. I admire him. I think he's the most professional actor I've ever worked with. And he loves acting, and he loves movies, and he'll die in the saddle. And there's something to be admired in that. There are other things that I don't admire as much, but
I'm glad to hear you say he's a wonderful actor, because I've always thought he was. And,
hey, let me tell you something. When he gets on a horse and he says, move him out,
you move him whether you want to or not.
You better believe it.
So what happened? Then
he had just done an interview in Playboy that was very controversial. He said some really outrageous things. And we had an actor in the movie, Roscoe Lee Brown, who wasn't as upset as I thought he should have been about some of the things that Wayne had said. And I let him know that I read the article just before we went into rehearsal. Now, there's not going to be any improvising with John Wayne. I mean, the script says, he says that, and if you say something else, he says, hey, where does it say long hair says this? Where does it say the up-and-coming young man says that he doesn't like me?
And even you have to stand on your toes to answer Wayne, don't you? Isn't he taller than you by about 3 inches?
Yeah, oh yeah, he's a big man.
Well, what happened? Did you get through?
Well, I got to him, and after we had done the scene, he said to me, what is it? I mean, what did I do wrong? I said, you didn't do anything wrong, you know? But I said, until I pull a trigger on the gun tomorrow, which was then the shooting part was the end of it, I says, I just can't get out of the mind some of the things that you've said about people and the way you've behaved in certain situations that I've seen. And I don't like and I just kept dealing on the negative things about him. I said, I don't like the bully aspects about you, man. And I just don't want to I don't want to talk about it anymore. And if you don't like it, then I got a little hot with him, and I just walked. And Mark Rydell, much to his credit, who was the director, was totally supportive of that attitude in me. He says, you know, and Wayne understood it, because he understood that I had climbed the ladder as an actor and got to a certain point, and he knew that I was going to go on beyond the point I was at in that film and everything. And he felt a kind of, I don't know, this is really not nice to say, but I got the feeling that he felt for me what he wished his son had gone on to do, Patrick, the actor. And Patrick wasn't as interested in acting as I was. Patrick played certain kinds of roles and wasn't really, didn't seem to be as dedicated to acting. And John Wayne always used to seem to encourage the young man in the film that he was with to take on. I mean, you can even see it in the Glenn Campbell performance in True Grit. He pulls for Glenn Campbell, no matter, even though at times the character shouldn't pull. He's always pulling for the young actor, and that's a great thing from a guy like that, because guys like John Wayne can intimidate you so much and just cripple you. You know, there are two things that are absolutely paralytic to actors when you go on a set, particularly if you're younger, in your younger years in Hollywood, and that is, number one, the behind-the-camera intimidation. Which is never meant personally, but it's just guys reading newspapers when you're crying your guts out, you know what I mean? Well, they've seen it all before, so they just do it. They don't mean it personally. And the second is when a big, famous star treats you badly or goes home before your close-up or something like that, you know. And he's never like that. He and Betty Davis were the two aces as far as that goes.
What if you'd heard John Wayne was crying his heart out that night and couldn't come back to the set because you'd hurt his little feelings so? There's no time for you to answer that because we have run out of time. We had some clips of you acting, and you're so much... You're so fascinating. I don't want to say you're more interesting in person, because then you'd have wasted your time in acting, wouldn't you? Believe it or not, we're out of time. This has been most interesting. Please come back.
Oh, I sure will.
Okay, Bruce Dern, thank you. Good night. We'll see you tomorrow.